You'd look better in something from the discount rack downtown." Vivienne Ashford's voice dripped with disdain as she circled around Alia Freeman in the sunlit bridal boutique. Fluorescent lights overhead casting harsh shadows on the ivory gowns surrounding them. The shop owner's red blazer and matching skirt seemed to glow with authority as she gestured dismissively at the elegant black woman standing before a wall of designer dresses. "This is couture, honey. Maybe try David's Bridal." Her laugh was sharp and cutting, designed to wound. Several other customers turned to stare, some nodding in agreement, others looking uncomfortable but saying nothing. Alia's green blouse and dark jeans suddenly felt inadequate in the pristine white space, but her posture remained dignified as Ashford continued her cruel assessment. What Vivienne didn't know was that the woman she was humiliating had won cases that changed laws, and the quiet man filming everything on his phone wasn't just documenting discrimination. He was about to inherit the city. Welcome to Frost Folktales. This is where we tell the stories of those who were underestimated, dismissed, and targeted, yet chose courage over silence. If these stories move you, subscribe and be part of a community that refuses to let them fade into the background. This morning had really started off with such beautiful dreams and hopes. Alia Freeman pushed through the glass doors of Ashford's Bridal Boutique at precisely 10:30, her excitement palpable as natural sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The prestigious shop occupied the corner of Fifth Avenue's most exclusive district, its reputation built on serving the city's elite brides. Crystal chandeliers caught the overhead fluorescent lighting, casting prismatic rainbows across walls lined with designer gowns that cost more than most people's cars. Marcus Wellington followed close behind, his orange button-down shirt crisp against his khaki pants, a gentle smile playing at his lips as he watched his fiancée's face light up at the sight of hundreds of wedding dresses. They had waited months for this appointment, saving and planning for what should have been one of the most magical moments of their engagement journey. "I've dreamed about this day since I was little," Alia whispered to Marcus, her voice barely containing her joy. Her green blouse complemented her radiant skin as she moved toward a display of Vera Wang originals, each dress more stunning than the last. The dark jeans she'd chosen were practical yet elegant, perfect for what she'd anticipated would be hours of trying on gowns. Vivienne Ashford emerged from behind the marble reception desk like a predator sensing weakness. Her red blazer was perfectly tailored, matching her pencil skirt in a shade that screamed power and exclusivity. At 52, she had built her boutique into the most coveted bridal destination in the state, catering exclusively to families whose names appeared on hospital wings and university buildings. The moment Vivienne's pale blue eyes settled on Alia, her expression shifted. The practiced smile she reserved for her usual clientele never materialized. Instead, she approached with the calculated coldness of someone making an immediate and cruel assessment. "I'm not sure we have anything in your price range," Vivienne announced without preamble, her voice carrying across the boutique's hushed interior. The overhead fluorescent lights seemed to intensify, casting everything in stark relief as other customers turned to witness the interaction. Amanda Pierce, browsing near the accessories display in her navy blue jacket, looked up sharply at the shop owner's tone. She had been examining pearl tiaras, but something about Vivienne's voice made her abandon her shopping to observe what was unfolding. Alia blinked, momentarily confused by the abrupt statement. "Excuse me? I have an appointment." Alia Freeman, scheduled for 10:30. "We discussed designer options over the phone." Vivienne's laugh was brittle and dismissive. "Oh honey, I think there's been some confusion. These gowns start at $15,000. Maybe you'd be more comfortable somewhere that caters to your demographic. There's a nice little shop downtown that specializes in more affordable options." The words hit Alia like physical blows, but her legal training kicked in immediately. Years of facing hostile opposing counsel and prejudiced judges had taught her to maintain composure even when fury threatened to consume her. She straightened her shoulders, meeting Vivienne's gaze directly. Marcus's jaw tightened as he witnessed his fiancée's humiliation, but he remained strategically quiet, discreetly pulling out his phone and beginning to record. His orange shirt caught the light as he positioned himself for the best angle, documenting every cruel word and dismissive gesture. "I'm sorry, but I don't understand what you mean by my demographic," Aaliyah said, her voice steady despite the humiliation burning in her chest. "Could you clarify what you're referring to?" Vivienne waved her manicured hand dismissively, the gesture encompassing Aaliyah's entire presence. "You know exactly what I mean. This is high-end couture. These dresses are worn by senators' daughters, CEOs' wives, old money families. I'm sure you understand." Donna Lawson, a boutique employee in her 30s wearing a red dress that coordinated with her boss's outfit, materialized beside Vivienne with a smirk that spoke volumes about the shop's culture. She carried a tablet and wore the expression of someone enjoying a familiar performance. "Maybe we could show her the sample sale dresses in the back?" Donna suggested with false sweetness. "Some of them are only a few thousand. Much more reasonable for someone like her." Amanda Pierce set down the tiara she'd been examining, her blue jacket bright under the fluorescent lights, as she moved closer to the unfolding scene. Her expression shifted from curiosity to growing discomfort as she began to understand what she was witnessing. The boutique held perhaps a dozen other customers that Saturday morning, women of various ages, browsing through racks of dreams made tangible in silk and satin. Some pretended not to notice the confrontation, but others watched with interest that ranged from uncomfortable to approving. An elderly woman in a blue jacket near the mother of the bride section nodded approvingly at Vivienne's comments, whispering something to her companion that made them both glance toward Aaliyah with undisguised disdain. But a younger woman trying on veils looked increasingly disturbed by what she was hearing, her eyes darting between Vivienne and Aaliyah with growing awareness that she was witnessing something deeply wrong. Aaliyah approached the wall of designer gowns despite the hostile atmosphere, her dignity intact even as Vivienne's cruelty escalated. She reached toward a stunning Monique Louyer creation, its beadwork catching the overhead lighting like captured stars. "I don't think that would be flattering on you, dear," Vivienne interjected quickly, her red blazer a harsh contrast to the soft ivory gown. "That style requires a certain sophistication to carry it off properly. Perhaps something simpler would be more appropriate." Marcus continued filming, capturing not just the overt discrimination, but also the reactions of everyone present. His orange button-down shirt remained immaculate despite the tension radiating through his body. His training in political diplomacy warring with his instinct to defend the woman he loved. Aaliyah's green blouse seemed to brighten under the fluorescent lights as she maintained her composure, but those who knew how to read body language could see the slight tightening around her eyes, the barely perceptible straightening of her spine that indicated someone preparing for battle. "I'd like to try this dress, please," Aaliyah said calmly, indicating the Monique Louyer gown. Her voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being heard in courtrooms, though Vivienne seemed oblivious to the shift in tone. Amanda Pierce stepped forward, her blue jacket marking her as an unexpected ally in the pristine white space. "Excuse me, but why is she being treated differently than other customers? I've been watching, and I don't understand why her appointment isn't being honored." Vivienne's red-painted lips compressed into a thin line as she realized her performance had gained an unwanted critic. "This is my boutique, and I reserve the right to serve customers who are genuinely qualified to purchase our merchandise. It's nothing personal, simply good business practice." The cruelty was casual, practiced, as if Vivienne had perfected these interactions over years of running her exclusive establishment. Her red blazer and matching skirt seemed like armor, protecting her from the consequences of her own hatred. Donna Lawson moved closer to her boss, her red dress creating a visual alliance as she prepared to support whatever escalation might come next. The tablet in her hands contained appointment schedules that proved Aaliyah belonged there. But truth had become irrelevant in the face of predetermined prejudice. Marcus's phone captured every word, every gesture, every moment of systematic humiliation designed to drive them from the store. His orange shirt remained bright under the fluorescent lighting as he methodically documented evidence that would soon change everything. The boutique's atmosphere had shifted from the hushed reverence typically associated with bridal shopping to something toxic and electric. Crystal chandeliers continued casting rainbows across walls of ivory, silk, and satin, but beauty had been corrupted by the ugliness of discrimination. Other customers found themselves forced to choose sides simply by remaining present. The elderly woman in the blue jacket near the mother of the bride section whispered more comments to her companion, both nodding approvingly at Vivienne's handling of the situation. But Amanda Pierce stood her ground, her discomfort transforming into something stronger as she recognized injustice unfolding before her eyes. Her blue jacket caught the overhead lighting as she prepared to speak again, unwilling to remain silent while witnessing such blatant discrimination. Aaliyah Freeman stood surrounded by thousands of wedding dresses, each representing some bride's perfect day, but found herself fighting for basic human dignity instead of choosing between silk and satin. Her green blouse and dark jeans had become symbols of everything Vivienne found objectionable, though they would have been perfectly appropriate on any other customer. The stage was set for a confrontation that would extend far beyond the boutique's elegant walls. Though Vivienne Ashford had no idea she was about to learn the most expensive lesson of her life. Her red blazer blazed like a target under the fluorescent lights as she prepared to escalate her cruelty, unaware that every word was being documented by someone with the power to destroy everything she had built. The bright fluorescent lights overhead cast harsh shadows across Vivienne Ashford's face as her red blazer seemed to pulse with her growing disdain. She circled around Aaliyah Freeman like a predator sizing up prey, her perfectly manicured fingers drumming against her matching red skirt as she prepared to deliver another cutting remark. "You know, I've been in this business for 15 years, Vivienne began, her voice dripping with false sweetness that couldn't mask the venom beneath. "And I can always tell when someone is simply out of their element. This boutique caters to a very specific clientele, if you understand my meaning." Aaliyah Freeman maintained her composure, her green blouse catching the natural sunlight streaming through the large windows as she continued examining a stunning ivory gown with delicate lace detailing. Her dark jeans and casual appearance seemed to fuel Vivienne's misconceptions about her background and financial status. "I'm not sure I understand what you're implying," Aaliyah responded calmly, though her trained legal mind was already cataloging every discriminatory comment for future reference. Vivienne's laugh was sharp and cruel, echoing through the pristine showroom where other customers had begun to notice the increasingly uncomfortable interaction. "Oh, I think you understand perfectly. Your type typically shops at David's Bridal or those discount wedding outlets in the strip malls. This is haute couture, darling. These gowns start at $8,000. The words hung in the air like poison, and Aaliyah felt the familiar burn of injustice that had driven her to become one of the city's most feared civil rights attorneys. But she also felt something else, a cold professional detachment that would serve her well in the battle ahead. Marcus Wellington stood near a display of vintage veils, his orange button-down shirt bright under the overhead lighting as he continued discreetly filming the interaction on his phone. His khaki pants and casual demeanor made him appear like any other supportive fiancé, but his sharp eyes missed nothing as he documented each discriminatory comment and gesture. From behind the main counter, Donna Lawson emerged, wearing a red dress that seemed to match her boss's energy for cruelty. She approached with a clipboard and fake smile that didn't reach her eyes, clearly emboldened by Vivienne's behavior. "Excuse me," Donna interrupted, her voice saccharine but her intent malicious. I couldn't help but notice you haven't provided any payment verification yet. We typically require a credit check and deposit before allowing customers to handle our premium inventory. Aaliyah turned to face the employee, her expression remaining neutral despite the obvious racial profiling. Is that standard policy for all customers, or just certain ones? Well, Donna stammered slightly, caught off guard by the direct question. It depends on various factors. You know, to protect our investment. Near the elegant seating area, Amanda Pierce shifted uncomfortably in her blue jacket, her own wedding dress appointment temporarily forgotten as she witnessed the blatant discrimination unfolding before her. Her hands clenched in her lap as she struggled with whether to intervene, her conscience warring with social conditioning to avoid confrontation. This is absolutely ridiculous, Amanda finally burst out, rising from her chair with righteous indignation. I've been sitting here for 20 minutes and nobody asked me for a credit check or deposit. What's different about this customer? Vivian's head snapped toward Amanda, her red blazer seeming to flare like a matador's cape as she prepared to defend her territory. Mrs. Pierce, every customer situation is unique. We assess based on multiple criteria to ensure appropriate service levels. What criteria exactly? Amanda pressed, her voice growing stronger as she found her courage. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're treating this woman differently based on assumptions that have nothing to do with her ability to purchase a dress. The boutique's atmosphere grew increasingly tense as other customers began to take notice of the confrontation. An elderly woman in a blue jacket whispered disapprovingly to her companion, though whether her disapproval was directed at Vivian's behavior or Aaliyah's presence remained unclear. Two middle-aged women browsing near the accessories wall exchanged meaningful glances and nodded approvingly at Vivian's treatment of Aaliyah, their own prejudices aligning with the shop owner's discriminatory practices. Marcus Wellington moved closer to his fiancée, his phone now openly visible as he continued recording. The natural skylight from above illuminated his determined expression as he captured every moment of the escalating discrimination. Actually, Aaliyah said, her voice carrying the quiet authority that had commanded respect in countless courtrooms, I'd like to try on that dress. She pointed to an exquisite designer gown that clearly cost well into 5 figures, its price tag discreetly tucked behind the flowing skirt. Vivian's face contorted with barely contained disgust. That particular piece is part of our exclusive collection. It's not really suitable for everyone. Perhaps something from our more accessible line would be more appropriate for your needs. And what needs would those be? Aaliyah asked, her legal training evident in her precise questioning. Well, Vivian floundered, realizing she was walking into dangerous territory but unable to control her prejudiced assumptions. Certain gowns are designed with specific body types and, shall we say, cultural aesthetics in mind. That dress was created for a very particular bride. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by Amanda Pierce's audible gasp of shock at the blatant racial implications of Vivian's comment. Donna Lawson, emboldened by her boss's increasingly open discrimination, decided to pile on with her own cruel observations. Plus, returns can be such a hassle with these expensive pieces. Some customers tend to, rent rather than buy, if you catch my meaning. Marcus Wellington's grip tightened on his phone as he watched his beloved fiancée endure insult after insult with remarkable grace. His orange shirt seemed to burn brighter under the fluorescent lights as his internal anger grew, though his exterior remained calm and focused on documentation. I'm sorry, but this is completely unacceptable, Amanda Pierce declared, standing and approaching the group with fire in her eyes. I've been coming to this boutique for years, and I've never seen anyone treated with such disrespect. You're being discriminatory, and it's disgusting. Mrs. Pierce, Vivian snapped, her composure finally beginning to crack under the pressure of confrontation. I'll thank you not to interfere with my business operations. I know how to serve my customers appropriately. Appropriately? Amanda's voice rose in disbelief. You've questioned this woman's finances, insulted her appearance, and suggested she doesn't belong here. How is any of that appropriate customer service? Other customers in the boutique began choosing sides, with some nodding agreement with Amanda's defense, while others whispered support for Vivienne's position. The beautiful showroom, with its elegant displays and carefully curated atmosphere, had transformed into a battlefield of competing moral positions. Vivienne suddenly noticed Marcus Wellington's phone and the obvious recording taking place. Excuse me, sir, but recording is strictly prohibited in this establishment. Store policy. You'll need to delete whatever you've captured immediately. Marcus looked up calmly, his finger never leaving the record button. Actually, I don't see any posted signs indicating that policy. And we're in a public accommodation which has different rules regarding documentation. This is private property, Vivienne insisted, her red blazer now seeming more like a target than a symbol of authority. I have the right to control photography and recording. Interesting legal position, Aaliyah interjected quietly, her attorney instincts fully engaged. Though I'm not sure it would hold up under scrutiny, especially given the circumstances. Despite the hostile environment and escalating confrontation, Aaliyah maintained her dignity and pressed forward with her original intention. Now, about trying on that dress, I believe I have every right as a customer to examine your merchandise. Vivienne's face flushed red, matching her blazer as she realized her discriminatory behavior was being documented and challenged on multiple fronts. Fine, she spat, but don't expect any special accommodation or assistance, and any damage to the garment will result in full purchase price charges. As Aaliyah moved toward the fitting rooms, Vivienne couldn't resist one final cruel comment that would prove to be her ultimate downfall. I just hope you understand that certain gowns aren't meant for everyone. Some styles require a particular breeding and background to carry off properly. The words echoed through the boutique like a thunderclap, causing even Vivienne's supporters among the other customers to shift uncomfortably. Amanda Pierce stood frozen in shock at the blatant classist and racial implications, while Marcus Wellington's phone captured every poisonous syllable. Donna Lawson smirked, in agreement with her boss, completely unaware that their documented behavior was about to trigger consequences neither of them could imagine. The fluorescent lights overhead seemed to intensify, casting harsh shadows that highlighted the moral divisions now clearly drawn throughout the elegant boutique. Aaliyah Freeman paused at the entrance to the fitting room, her green blouse bright in the natural sunlight as she turned back to face her tormentors. Her expression remained serene, but something had shifted in her demeanor, a subtle transformation that spoke of gathering storms and approaching justice. The battle lines were drawn, the evidence was being collected, and the reckoning that Vivienne Ashford and Donna Lawson so richly deserved was about to begin. The tension in Vivienne Ashford's boutique had reached a breaking point, transforming the elegant space into a battlefield of moral convictions. The overhead fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the faces of customers and staff, revealing the deep divisions that Vivienne's discriminatory behavior had created. What had begun as a simple shopping trip for Aaliyah Freeman had evolved into something much larger, a moment where people would reveal their true character under pressure. Amanda Pierce, her blue jacket pristine under the bright lighting, could no longer remain silent. She stepped forward, her voice cutting through the uncomfortable murmurs that had filled the boutique. Excuse me, but I've been shopping here for 3 years, and I've never seen anyone treated this way. Her words carried the weight of genuine moral outrage, her eyes fixed directly on Vivienne Ashford. What exactly are your business standards that justify this behavior? Vivienne's red blazer seemed to intensify in color as her anger flared. She whipped around to face Amanda, her carefully maintained composure beginning to crack. My business standards involve maintaining the reputation and clientele that have made this boutique successful for over a decade. Her voice carried a defensive edge that hadn't been there before. "I have every right to ensure that my customers and my merchandise are properly matched." Properly matched? Amanda's voice rose with incredulity. "You mean matched by skin color? Because that's exactly what I'm witnessing here." She gestured toward Aaliyah Freeman, who stood with remarkable dignity despite the ongoing harassment. "This woman has been nothing but polite and respectful, while you've been openly hostile from the moment she walked in." The boutique fell into an uncomfortable silence as other customers began to realize they were witnessing something significant. A middle-aged woman near the evening gown section quickly gathered her purse and headed for the exit, clearly uncomfortable with the confrontation. Another customer, an elderly woman examining veils, paused in her browsing to watch the exchange with obvious disapproval, though whether her disapproval was directed at Vivienne or at the confrontation itself remained unclear. However, not everyone shared Amanda's moral stance. A woman in an expensive navy dress and diamond jewelry stepped closer to Vivienne, her voice carrying undertones of support. "Some businesses do have certain standards and clientele expectations. Perhaps there are other establishments that might be more suitable." Her words carried the same discriminatory implications as Vivienne's, though delivered with a veneer of politeness that made them no less offensive. Donna Lawson seized the moment to escalate her own participation in the harassment. The boutique employee, her red dress making her complicit support of Vivienne obvious, moved closer to Aaliyah Freeman with renewed aggression. "You know, we get people in here all the time who try on expensive dresses with no intention of actually purchasing them. Some even buy dresses, wear them to events, and then try to return them the next day, claiming they don't fit properly." The implication was clear and deliberately insulting. Donna's accusation suggested that Aaliyah Freeman was somehow more likely to engage in fraudulent behavior simply because of her race. The cruelty of the comment hung in the air like a toxic cloud, poisoning the atmosphere further. Marcus Wellington, his orange shirt bright under the fluorescent lights, moved strategically around the store while maintaining his documentation efforts. His phone captured every angle of the discrimination, but more importantly, he had begun making quiet phone calls. His voice was low and controlled as he spoke into his phone, but those nearby could catch fragments of his conversations. "Yes, I need you to see this immediately. No, this is happening right now. Document everything." Between calls, Marcus was methodically uploading footage to multiple social media platforms. His fingers moved quickly across his phone screen as he tagged relevant civil rights organizations, local news outlets, and community leaders. Each upload was carefully crafted with detailed descriptions of the ongoing discrimination, ensuring that the story would spread beyond the confines of the boutique. Aaliyah Freeman, maintaining her composure despite the escalating hostility, decided to take a more direct approach. Her legal training kicked in as she addressed Vivienne with professional clarity. "I'd like to speak with the manager about your store's policies regarding customer service and equal treatment." Vivienne's red blazer seemed to pulse with her growing anger as she stepped closer, her voice dripping with arrogance. "I am the owner of this establishment, and I make all the policies. My decision about how to run my business is final, and I'm telling you that you need to either make a purchase immediately or leave my store." The ultimatum hung in the air like a gauntlet thrown down in challenge. Vivienne had crossed a new line, moving from subtle discrimination to overt threats and demands. Her public declaration of ownership was meant to assert absolute authority, but instead it made her legally vulnerable in ways she didn't understand. Aaliyah Freeman's response was measured and professional, revealing hints of her legal expertise without fully disclosing her identity. "As the owner, you're certainly entitled to establish policies. However, I'm curious about how those policies comply with state and federal public accommodation laws. Specifically, I'm wondering about your procedures for ensuring equal treatment of all customers, regardless of race or ethnicity. The legal terminology and specific references caught Vivienne off guard. Her confident demeanor faltered slightly as she realized she was dealing with someone who possessed more knowledge than she had anticipated. I don't need to justify my business practices to anyone. This is a private establishment, and I can serve whoever I choose. Actually, that's not entirely accurate, Aliyah continued, her voice remaining calm, but carrying an undertone of professional authority. Public accommodations, including retail establishments open to the general public, are subject to specific anti-discrimination laws. I'm curious about your staff training regarding these requirements. Donna Lawson shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware that the conversation had taken a more serious legal turn. Her earlier aggression began to waver as she recognized that she might be exposing herself to professional consequences beyond simple rudeness. Marcus Wellington's phone calls became more frequent and urgent. He stepped toward a corner of the boutique where he could speak more privately, but his animated gestures and serious expression made it clear that he was mobilizing resources and contacts. One overheard fragment revealed the scope of his networking. Dad needs to know about this immediately. Yes, it's that serious. Have legal review everything. The realization that Marcus was connected to people of influence began to dawn on some of the observers. His confidence, his systematic documentation, and his urgent phone calls suggested connections that went beyond typical customer complaints. Amanda Pierce, emboldened by Aliyah Freeman's legal questioning, pressed her own challenge to Vivienne. I've shopped here regularly, and I've never been asked about my ability to pay or had my intentions questioned. The difference in treatment is obvious to everyone here. Some customers require different approaches, Vivienne replied, but her voice lacked its earlier conviction. The combination of legal scrutiny and social pressure was beginning to crack her confidence. The boutique had become a microcosm of broader social divisions. Those who remained fell into clear camps: supporters of discrimination who nodded approvingly at Vivienne's stance, uncomfortable observers who wanted to leave but felt compelled to witness the outcome, and active allies like Amanda Pierce, who refused to remain silent in the face of obvious injustice. Marcus Wellington returned from his corner phone calls with renewed purpose. His uploading activity intensified as he shared footage across multiple platforms simultaneously. His orange shirt moved like a beacon through the boutique as he documented the escalating situation from various angles, ensuring that no detail of the discrimination would be lost. Vivienne Ashford, sensing that the situation was spiraling beyond her control, decided to make one final definitive statement that would establish her authority and end the confrontation. Her red blazer seemed to symbolize the anger and prejudice that had driven her behavior throughout the encounter. She stepped directly in front of Aliyah Freeman, her voice carrying a level of venom that shocked even her supporters. Let me be perfectly clear. People like you don't belong in a store like this. You don't have the class, the breeding, or the financial background that my real customers possess. This boutique caters to a certain type of person, and you are definitely not that type. The words hung in the air like a toxic explosion, crossing every possible line of human decency and legal propriety. Even Donna Lawson stepped back, recognizing that her boss had ventured into territory that would have severe consequences. The few customers who had supported Vivienne's earlier behavior looked uncomfortable with the explicit nature of her final statement. Amanda Pierce gasped audibly, her blue jacket trembling with her emotional reaction to the blatant racism. Marcus Wellington's phone captured every word, his documentation now possessing the kind of explicit discriminatory language that would make legal action straightforward and successful. Aliyah Freeman stood in the bright fluorescent light, her dignity intact despite the assault on her character. Her legal mind was already processing the implications of Vivienne's statement, recognizing that the boutique owner had just provided irrefutable evidence of discriminatory intent. The battle lines were now completely drawn, with no ambiguity about the moral positions of everyone involved. The consequences that Marcus Wellington had been setting in motion through his phone calls and social media activity were about to transform this local incident into something much larger and more devastating for Vivienne Ashford than she could possibly imagine. The fluorescent lights above cast everything in sharp clarity as Aaliyah Freeman straightened her shoulders, her green blouse catching the natural daylight streaming through the boutique's large windows. The humiliation that had been building for the past 20 minutes suddenly transformed into something else entirely. Something powerful. "Before we go any further," Aaliyah said, her voice taking on a different quality, more authoritative and precise. "I think there are some things you should know about me." She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card, holding it between two fingers like a weapon. "My name is Aaliyah Freeman, and I'm a civil rights attorney specializing in discrimination cases." The boutique fell silent, except for the soft hum of the air conditioning. Vivienne Ashford's confident smirk wavered as she stared at the business card, her red blazer suddenly seeming less like armor and more like a target. "I've spent the last 8 years building a career around cases exactly like this one," Aaliyah continued, her professional demeanor now fully engaged. "Public accommodations discrimination, specifically. I'm quite familiar with the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title II, which prohibits discrimination in places of public accommodation based on race, color, religion, or national origin." Vivienne's face had gone pale beneath her carefully applied makeup. "I don't understand what you're implying. This is a high-end boutique with certain standards that apparently include making assumptions about customers based on their race?" Aaliyah interrupted smoothly. "Because that's what I've documented here today. Your immediate assumption that I couldn't afford your merchandise, your suggestion that I shop at other types of stores, and your employees' questioning of my payment methods before I'd even selected a dress." Donna Lawson's smug expression was rapidly dissolving as she realized the gravity of the situation. Her red dress seemed to make her stand out even more under the bright lights as other customers turned to stare. "Furthermore," Aaliyah continued, pulling out her own phone, "I've been taking notes on our entire interaction. Just last month, I won a landmark case against Pemberton's restaurant chain for similar discriminatory practices. The settlement was substantial, and it set a precedent that other businesses would be wise to consider." Marcus Wellington stepped forward from where he'd been quietly observing, his orange button-down shirt bright under the fluorescent lighting. "And I think it's time I introduced myself as well." His voice was calm but carried an unmistakable authority. "Marcus Wellington. My father is Mayor Richard Wellington." The effect was immediate and electric. Amanda Pierce, who had been watching the confrontation unfold from near the window in her blue jacket, gasped audibly. The few other customers in the boutique stopped their browsing entirely, realizing they were witnessing something extraordinary. Vivienne Ashford's red blazer now seemed to mark her as the center of a disaster entirely of her own making. "The mayor's son?" she repeated weakly. "That's right," Marcus confirmed, holding up his phone. "And I've been recording everything that's happened here today. Every comment, every discriminatory action, every moment of this interaction." Donna Lawson looked like she might be sick. The casual cruelty she'd displayed just minutes earlier had evaporated entirely, replaced by dawning horror at what she'd participated in. "Now wait just a minute," Vivienne stammered, her authority crumbling with each word. "There's been some kind of misunderstanding here. I run a respectable business, and I certainly never intended—" "Never intended what?" Aaliyah asked pointedly. "To discriminate. Because I can cite several specific instances from the past 20 minutes where your actions and words clearly violated my civil rights. Would you like me to enumerate them?" The boutique owner's hands were actually shaking now. "Please, I think we can work this out. Perhaps there's been a miscommunication. I'd be happy to offer you any dress in the store, complimentary of course. So now that you know who I am and who my fiancé is, you're suddenly willing to provide the same level of service you give to your other customers? Alia's voice remained professional, but there was steel beneath the calm surface. That's interesting, because 5 minutes ago, you were questioning whether I belonged in this store at all. Amanda Pierce had pulled out her own phone and was recording the conversation. Her blue jacket a stark contrast to Vivienne's increasingly desperate red blazer. "This is incredible," she murmured to herself, loud enough for others to hear. "You're really Alia Freeman? I saw you on the news last month talking about that restaurant case." "The very same," Alia confirmed with a slight nod in Amanda's direction. "And this situation is remarkably similar to several cases I've handled recently. Business owners who make immediate assumptions about customers based on race, who provide different levels of service, who create hostile environments for people of color." Marcus stepped closer to Alia, his phone still recording. "The footage I've captured today clearly shows a pattern of discriminatory behavior. From the moment we walked in, there was a marked difference in how you treated my fiancé compared to other customers. I've already sent copies to several contacts," he continued, his voice steady but carrying an unmistakable weight. "Local news outlets, civil rights organizations, and yes, members of my father's administration who handle business licensing and compliance issues." Vivienne Ashford looked like she might faint. Her red blazer, which had seemed so authoritative when she'd first approached them, now made her appear vulnerable and exposed under the bright boutique lighting. "You sent it already?" Donna Lawson whispered, her face ashen. "Modern technology is remarkable," Marcus replied calmly. "Instant sharing, cloud storage, multiple backup systems. Everything that happened here today is already preserved in several locations." Alia consulted her phone, scrolling through notes she'd been taking. "I have documentation of at least 7 distinct instances of discriminatory treatment. The initial assumption about my shopping preferences, the suggestion that I shop elsewhere, the questioning of my financial capability, the different tone and level of service compared to other customers, the employees' participation in creating a hostile environment, and the resistance when we attempted to actually try merchandise. And all of it captured on video with clear audio," Marcus added. "From multiple angles, actually. I was quite thorough." The other customers in the boutique had now gathered closer, realizing they were witnessing something significant. Word was already spreading through whispered conversations and text messages. "I want to be very clear about something," Alia said, addressing Vivienne directly. "This isn't about money or free merchandise or personal revenge. This is about systematic discrimination that affects countless people every single day. This is about business practices that violate federal civil rights law and create environments where people are judged and treated poorly based solely on their race." Vivienne was now openly panicking, her red blazer wrinkled from nervous gesturing. "Please, Miss Freeman, surely we can discuss this privately. I'm certain we can reach some kind of understanding." The time for private discussion was 20 minutes ago, when professional courtesy and basic human decency should have guided your interactions with all customers, Alia replied. "Instead, you chose to create a public spectacle of discrimination, so the response will necessarily be equally public." Marcus looked at his phone screen. "I'm already getting responses from the media contacts. Channel 7 wants to interview us this afternoon. The Civil Rights Coalition has requested copies of the footage, and my father's office is understandably very interested in this situation." "Your father's office?" Vivienne repeated faintly. "The mayor takes civil rights violations very seriously," Marcus explained, "especially when they involve businesses operating within city limits under city-issued licenses and permits." Amanda Pierce approached them, her phone still recording. "Miss Freeman, I just want to say that what I witnessed here today was absolutely appalling. I've been shopping in this area for years, and I had no idea this kind of behavior was happening." "Unfortunately, it happens more often than people realize," Alia replied. "Many incidents go unreported because people don't know their rights or don't have the resources to pursue legal action. That's exactly why cases like this are so important. Donna Lawson finally found her voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. "I didn't mean, I was just following." She trailed off, realizing there was no acceptable explanation for her participation in the discrimination. Following orders isn't a defense for civil rights violations, Aaliyah informed her matter-of-factly. Individual employees can be held personally liable for discriminatory actions even when acting on behalf of their employers. The boutique's atmosphere had completely transformed. Where there had once been an air of exclusive sophistication, there was now tension and the clear sense that something momentous was unfolding. The natural daylight, streaming through the windows, seemed to illuminate everything with harsh clarity. Vivienne made one last desperate attempt at damage control. "Ms. Freeman, I'm prepared to make this right. Whatever you need, whatever would resolve this situation." "What would resolve this situation," Aaliyah interrupted firmly, "is accountability, education, and systematic change to ensure this never happens to anyone else. The legal process will determine appropriate remedies and consequences." Marcus checked his phone again. "The story is already starting to spread on social media. I'm seeing shares and comments coming in." "Good," Aaliyah said simply. "Sunlight is the best disinfectant for discriminatory practices. When businesses know their actions will be documented and shared, they tend to reconsider their behavior." As they prepared to leave, Aaliyah turned back to address the gathered crowd. "I want everyone here to understand that what happened today was not acceptable, not legal, and not something any customer should ever have to endure. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of race, and businesses that fail to provide that standard of service will face consequences." The fluorescent lights seemed to spotlight the transformation that had taken place. Aaliyah Freeman and Marcus Wellington stood together, professional and dignified, while Vivienne Ashford's world crumbled around her red blazer. The power dynamic completely reversed from when they'd first entered the boutique. Marcus Wellington sat in his downtown office, the afternoon sunlight streaming through tall windows as overhead fluorescent lights illuminated his computer screens. His orange button-down shirt remained crisp, despite the intensity of the past few hours. The footage from Vivienne Ashford's boutique had been uploaded to multiple social media platforms, and the response was unlike anything he had ever witnessed. The video began simply enough, showing Aaliyah Freeman in her green blouse and dark jeans, approaching the wedding dresses with genuine excitement. But as Vivienne Ashford's cruel comments unfolded on screen, viewers could witness the systematic discrimination in real time. The audio captured every snide remark, every dismissive gesture, every moment of escalating cruelty that had transformed a joyful shopping experience into a humiliating ordeal. Within the first hour, the video had garnered 500 shares. By the second hour, that number had tripled. Comments poured in from viewers expressing outrage, disbelief, and solidarity with Aaliyah Freeman. Many shared their own experiences of discrimination, creating a digital community of support that transcended geographic boundaries. Marcus refreshed his phone screen and watched the share count climb past 10,000. The hashtag he had created, Justice for Aaliyah, was trending locally and beginning to gain national traction. His strategy of documenting everything was proving more powerful than he had anticipated. Brandon Miles, a prominent social media activist with over 200,000 followers, discovered the video during his regular monitoring of civil rights content. From his home office, wearing a green t-shirt and blue jeans, he immediately recognized the significance of what he was watching. The systematic nature of Vivienne Ashford's discrimination, combined with Aaliyah Freeman's dignified responses, created a perfect example of everyday racism that needed widespread attention. Brandon crafted a detailed post that provided context about discrimination in retail spaces, tagged relevant civil rights organizations, and encouraged his followers to share the story. His influence amplified the video's reach exponentially, introducing it to networks of activists, legal professionals, and social justice advocates across the country. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Comments flooded in from viewers who recognized the boutique, others who had experienced similar treatment, and many who simply wanted to express support for Aaliyah Freeman. The story began taking on a life of its own as people shared their own experiences and connected them to broader patterns of discrimination. Meanwhile, at Channel 7 News, reporter Vanessa Morton was reviewing social media trends when the video appeared in her feed. Wearing a red blouse and black skirt, she watched the footage twice before immediately contacting her news director. This wasn't just a local story about poor customer service. This was a documented case of discrimination involving the mayor's son and one of the city's most prominent civil rights attorneys. Vanessa grabbed her camera crew and headed directly to Vivienne Ashford's boutique. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the store's large windows, while fluorescent lights illuminated rows of wedding dresses that now seemed like silent witnesses to the morning's events. She found Vivienne Ashford in full panic mode, still wearing the red blazer from earlier, frantically making phone calls and pacing between dress racks. The shop owner's confident demeanor had completely evaporated, replaced by obvious desperation as she attempted to control a situation that was rapidly spiraling beyond her influence. "Miss Ashford, I'm Vanessa Morton from Channel 7 News," the reporter announced, her professional tone cutting through the boutique's tense atmosphere. "We'd like to get your response to the video that's currently going viral, showing your interaction with civil rights attorney Aaliyah Freeman." Vivienne Ashford's face went pale as she realized that the morning's events were now public knowledge. Her red blazer, which had symbolized authority and control just hours earlier, now seemed to mark her as a target. She attempted to compose herself, but her voice trembled as she tried to present an alternative narrative. "There's been a terrible misunderstanding," Vivienne insisted, her hands gesturing nervously toward the elegant dresses surrounding them. "I treat all my customers with respect and professionalism. Sometimes conversations can be taken out of context when you're only seeing part of the interaction." But Vanessa Morton had watched the complete video footage, and there was no context that could excuse the systematic discrimination she had witnessed. Her questions became more pointed as she asked about specific comments caught on camera, forcing Vivienne Ashford to confront the reality of her recorded behavior. Donna Lawson, still wearing her red dress from the morning, hovered nervously in the background. Her earlier confidence in supporting Vivienne Ashford's discrimination had vanished as she began to understand the serious consequences they were facing. Every cruel comment, every dismissive gesture, every moment of participation in the harassment had been captured and was now being viewed by thousands of people. Outside the boutique, Amanda Pierce stood with Vanessa Morton's cameras, wearing her blue jacket and speaking with the moral clarity that had driven her to intervene during the morning's events. Her witness testimony was powerful and detailed, describing exactly what she had observed and how systematic the discrimination had appeared. "I've shopped at many bridal boutiques," Amanda explained to the camera, her voice steady and clear. "What I witnessed this morning wasn't about customer service or business standards. It was about treating someone differently because of the color of her skin." Aaliyah Freeman was polite, well-dressed, and genuinely excited about finding her wedding dress. She deserved the same respect and consideration that any bride would expect. Amanda's testimony provided crucial independent verification of the video's content. As someone with no connection to either Aaliyah Freeman or Vivienne Ashford, her account carried significant weight with viewers and would prove invaluable if legal action followed. Samuel Griffin, director of the Regional Civil Rights Organization, was in a meeting when his assistant brought the viral video to his attention. Wearing a blue suit jacket and white shirt, he watched the footage with the experienced eye of someone who had spent decades fighting discrimination. Within minutes of viewing the complete video, he was drafting a formal response, and preparing to file complaints with multiple agencies. Samuel called a press conference for late afternoon, standing outside his organization's offices with the authority of 30 years in civil rights advocacy. The fluorescent lights from the building lobby cast additional illumination as news cameras captured his measured but forceful response. What we see in this video represents a clear pattern of discriminatory behavior that violates both state and federal civil rights laws. Samuel announced to the gathered reporters, "Our organization will be filing formal complaints with the appropriate agencies and working to ensure that this type of systematic discrimination faces serious consequences." Samuel's involvement elevated the story beyond social media outrage to formal civil rights action. His organization's credibility and resources meant that Vivienne Ashford would face official investigation and potential legal consequences for her behavior. At City Hall, Mayor Richard Wellington found himself facing unexpected questions about his future daughter-in-law's treatment at a local business. Wearing his characteristic blue suit, the mayor stood before reporters in the bright lights of the city's main conference room, carefully balancing his personal connection to the situation with his official responsibilities. "Discrimination against any citizen is unacceptable," Mayor Wellington stated firmly. "While I cannot comment on specific pending investigations, I want to be clear that our city has zero tolerance for businesses that engage in discriminatory practices. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect." The mayor's response walked a careful line between supporting his family and maintaining appropriate governmental neutrality. His measured words, nevertheless, sent a clear signal that city officials would not ignore documented discrimination, regardless of his personal connection to the victims. By evening, Aaliyah Freeman and Marcus Wellington appeared together at a hastily arranged press conference. Aaliyah wore a professional green blazer and matching skirt, her appearance contrasting sharply with the casual clothes from the morning's shopping trip. The transformation emphasized her professional credentials and the serious nature of the situation. Marcus stood beside her in a fresh blue dress shirt and dark suit, his earlier orange button-down replaced with more formal attire appropriate for addressing media attention. Together they presented a picture of dignity, professional competence, and unified purpose in confronting the discrimination they had experienced. This morning's events represent more than just poor customer service, Aaliyah explained to the assembled reporters, her voice carrying the authority of years in civil rights law. Systematic discrimination in public accommodations violates fundamental principles of equal treatment and human dignity. While this experience was personally painful, it also provides an opportunity to address broader patterns of discriminatory behavior. Aaliyah's professional response demonstrated exactly why she had earned her reputation as one of the city's most effective civil rights attorneys. Rather than responding with pure emotion, she placed the incident within a broader legal and social context that helped viewers understand its significance. Marcus addressed his role in documenting the discrimination, explaining how the decision to record everything had been driven by recognition that such treatment required accountability. His footage provided undeniable evidence that would prove crucial in any legal proceedings. The story's reach extended far beyond local news, as national media outlets picked up the video and began connecting it to broader discussions about discrimination in retail spaces. Aaliyah Freeman's impressive legal career became part of the narrative, with reporters highlighting her previous victories in civil rights cases and her reputation for professional excellence. Television segments featured legal analysts discussing the strength of potential discrimination claims, while social media continued amplifying the story through shares, comments, and related content. The hashtag Justice for Aaliyah had gained national traction, with celebrities, activists, and ordinary citizens expressing support and sharing their own experiences with discrimination. Back at the boutique, Vivienne Ashford watched her business's online reviews plummet in real time. 5-star ratings that had taken years to accumulate were being overwhelmed by 1-star reviews from people expressing disgust at the documented discrimination. Potential customers were canceling appointments, while current orders were being withdrawn as people refused to support a business associated with such behavior. The boutique's social media accounts were flooded with comments demanding accountability and apologies. Vivienne's attempts to delete negative comments only generated more criticism as screenshots of her efforts spread across platforms, creating additional evidence of her failure to take responsibility for her actions. By late evening, protesters began gathering outside the boutique, carrying signs calling for justice and an end to discrimination. The peaceful demonstration drew additional media attention while sending a clear message that the community would not tolerate such behavior from local businesses. Donna Lawson, still wearing her red dress, watched the growing crowd through the boutique's windows with increasing dread. Her participation in the morning's discrimination had been captured on video and was being viewed by thousands of people, including former customers who recognized her face and were demanding her termination. The employee who had eagerly joined in mocking Aaliyah Freeman now faced her own consequences as the reality of being associated with documented discrimination became clear. Phone calls from friends and family members who had seen the video forced her to confront how her behavior appeared to others and what it said about her character. Vivienne Ashford remained in her boutique long after normal business hours, surrounded by elegant wedding dresses that now seemed to mock her situation. The same red blazer that had represented her authority and success now felt like a scarlet letter marking her shame and professional failure. Social media analytics showed the video continuing to spread across platforms, with engagement rates indicating that viewers were not just watching but actively participating in conversations about discrimination and accountability. The story had tapped into broader frustrations about systematic racism and the power of documentation to expose injustice. Legal professionals commenting on the case noted the strength of the evidence and Aaliyah Freeman's reputation for building comprehensive discrimination cases. The combination of clear video documentation, multiple witnesses, and expert legal representation suggested that serious consequences would follow. As the day ended, the viral video had generated over 50,000 shares, hundreds of thousands of views, and countless comments expressing outrage, support, and determination to see justice served. What had begun as a simple shopping trip for a wedding dress had become a powerful example of how modern technology could expose discrimination and mobilize community response. The story's rapid spread demonstrated both the persistence of discriminatory behavior and the growing power of social media to hold businesses accountable for treating customers unequally. Aaliyah Freeman's dignity in the face of cruelty had inspired viewers, while Marcus Wellington's strategic documentation had provided the evidence necessary for meaningful consequences. Vivienne Ashford's world was changing irrevocably as the viral video continued spreading, carrying her discrimination to audiences she never could have imagined, all demanding justice for the bride she had tried to humiliate. The morning sun cast bright light through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Vivienne Ashford's boutique, but the usual elegance of the space felt hollow as she stood alone among the pristine wedding gowns. The overhead fluorescent lights hummed softly, illuminating what had become a battlefield rather than a bridal paradise. Outside, the first protesters had already begun gathering, their voices creating a low murmur that penetrated even the boutique's soundproofed interior. Vivienne adjusted her red blazer nervously, the same one she'd worn with such confidence just days ago when she'd humiliated Aaliyah Freeman. Now the vibrant color seemed to mock her, marking her as the target of a community's collective outrage. Her phone buzzed incessantly with notifications from social media platforms, each alert bringing more negative reviews, more angry comments, more calls for justice that made her stomach twist with growing dread. The boutique's front door chimed as Amanda Pierce entered, her blue jacket bright under the natural lighting. Vivienne's face brightened momentarily, hoping for a supportive customer, but Amanda's expression remained stern and purposeful. She approached the counter where Vivienne stood, her footsteps echoing in the unusually quiet space. "I came to tell you personally that I'll never shop here again," Amanda said firmly, her voice carrying across the showroom. "What I witnessed was absolutely disgusting. That beautiful woman deserved respect, not the humiliation you put her through." Vivienne's carefully practiced response tumbled out awkwardly. "Amanda, please understand, there was a misunderstanding. I never meant to offend anyone. I treat all my customers with respect." Amanda shook her head, her disappointment evident. "I was here. I saw everything. You deliberately targeted her because of her race, and your employee encouraged it. There's no misunderstanding about discrimination." As Amanda left, the door chimed again, but no new customers entered. Instead, the sound of growing voices outside became more audible. Vivienne moved to the window and felt her breath catch. What had been a small group of protesters had grown into dozens of community members holding signs reading "Justice for Aaliyah" and "No tolerance for discrimination." Her assistant Donna Lawson arrived for her shift, wearing a red dress that now seemed inappropriately festive given the circumstances. Donna's usual confident swagger had been replaced by nervous energy as she noticed the crowd outside. "Miss Ashford, my friends have been calling me all morning," Donna said, her voice smaller than usual. "They're saying I should apologize or quit. They recognized me in the videos online." Vivienne felt a surge of panic. If Donna abandoned her now, she'd be completely alone to face the consequences of their shared actions. "Donna, we need to stay strong. This will blow over if we just weather the storm together." But Donna's resolve was already cracking. "I don't think it will. My cousin works for the civil rights organization, and she says they're taking this very seriously. She won't even talk to me anymore." The phone rang, interrupting their conversation. Vivienne answered with forced cheerfulness. "Ashford Bridal Boutique. How may I help you?" "This is Jennifer from Cascade Wedding Suppliers. We're calling to inform you that we're terminating our contract effective immediately. The negative publicity surrounding your business conflicts with our company values." Vivienne's face went pale. "Jennifer, please, let's discuss this. One incident shouldn't destroy years of successful business partnership." "Mrs. Ashford, this wasn't just an incident. Our leadership team reviewed the footage, and we cannot continue supplying a business that engages in discrimination. Our decision is final." The call ended, leaving Vivienne staring at the phone in disbelief. Cascade had been her primary supplier for 5 years, providing the designer gowns that made her boutique prestigious. Without them, her inventory would become severely limited. Within the hour, 2 more suppliers called with similar messages. Each conversation followed the same pattern: professional courtesy mixed with firm rejection of any continued business relationship. Vivienne's red blazer felt increasingly like a target as she realized her entire supply chain was crumbling. The front door chimed again, and Pamela Sinclair entered wearing a tailored blue jacket, her expression businesslike but troubled. As the building's owner and Vivienne's landlord, Pamela's arrival could only mean serious complications. The older woman looked around the boutique with the calculating gaze of someone assessing property value and liability risks. "Vivienne, we need to discuss your lease," Pamela said without preamble. "The other tenants in this building are concerned about the negative attention your business is attracting." Vivienne's stomach dropped. "Pamela, surely you understand that this situation is temporary. Once people move on to other news, everything will return to normal." Pamela shook her head slowly. "I've been getting calls from the medical practice upstairs and the law firm next door. They're worried about clients associating them with discrimination. The protests outside are affecting foot traffic for everyone." "But my lease has 3 years remaining," Vivienne protested, desperation creeping into her voice, "which includes a morality clause that allows termination if business activities damage the building's reputation Pamela replied firmly. "I've reviewed the footage online, Vivienne. What you did was inexcusable, and it's affecting my other tenants' businesses." Donna Lawson listened to the conversation with growing alarm, realizing that her own employment was tied to a sinking ship. She quietly gathered her personal items from behind the counter, her red dress seeming to glow under the fluorescent lights as she prepared to abandon her post. Meanwhile, across town in her law firm's conference room, Aaliyah Freeman sat with her legal partner Rachel Summers, reviewing documentation for the formal complaints they were preparing. Aaliyah wore a professional green blouse and dark slacks, her appearance calm and controlled despite the whirlwind of activity surrounding the case. "The state attorney general's office is very interested in this case," Rachel reported, spreading files across the polished conference table. "They've been looking for clear-cut discrimination cases to demonstrate their civil rights enforcement priorities." Aaliyah nodded, reviewing witness statements and evidence. "We have everything we need: Marcus's video documentation, Amanda's witness testimony, and now additional victims coming forward with similar experiences at that boutique." Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Dad's office is being careful to let the legal process work independently, but they're fully supporting the investigation. He's proud of how professionally you're handling this." The afternoon brought a steady stream of developments. Samuel Griffin from the Civil Rights Organization held a press conference outside the boutique, his presence lending additional legitimacy to the community's outrage. News vans lined the street as Vanessa Morton and other reporters interviewed protesters and community leaders. "This case represents more than one individual's experience," Samuel announced to the gathered crowd. "It highlights systematic discrimination that affects our entire community. We applaud Aaliyah Freeman's courage in bringing this injustice to light." Inside the boutique, Vivienne watched the press conference through her window, her red blazer now feeling like a scarlet letter marking her shame. The beautiful gowns surrounding her seemed to mock the celebration and joy they were meant to represent. Her business, built over 15 years, was disintegrating in real time. Another supplier called to cancel their contract. Then her insurance company requested a meeting to discuss policy implications. The boutique's social media accounts were flooded with one-star reviews and calls for boycotts that extended beyond local customers to include anyone who had seen the viral footage. Donna finally approached Vivienne with her resignation letter. "I can't stay," she said quietly, her earlier bravado completely gone. "My family is ashamed of what we did. I need to apologize publicly and try to make this right." Vivienne felt the walls closing in as her employee, the one person who had supported her discrimination, abandoned her to face the consequences alone. "Donna, please don't leave me to handle this by myself." "You should have thought about that before we treated that woman so horribly," Donna replied, her red dress bright under the lights as she headed for the door. "She didn't deserve what we did to her." As evening approached, legal documents began arriving by courier. Aaliyah Freeman's law firm had filed formal complaints with multiple agencies: the State Attorney General, the Civil Rights Commission, and the Department of Consumer Affairs. Each document detailed specific violations and requested comprehensive investigations into the boutique's practices. Vivienne read through the legal papers with growing horror, realizing the scope of trouble she now faced. These weren't just civil complaints, but potential criminal charges for violating public accommodation laws. The legal language was precise and devastating, clearly written by someone who understood discrimination law intimately. Her lawyer called with grim assessments. "Vivienne, this is going to be expensive and difficult to defend. The video evidence is clear, and Aaliyah Freeman has an impeccable reputation in civil rights law. We need to consider settlement options immediately." Outside, the protesters continued their vigil as television news crews prepared evening reports. The boutique that had once represented Vivienne's dreams and achievements now stood as a monument to the consequences of hatred and discrimination. Pamela Sinclair left with promises to review lease termination procedures, while Vivienne remained alone among the wedding gowns that no longer held any buyers. Her red blazer, once a symbol of authority and success, now felt like evidence of her moral bankruptcy. The phone rang one final time that day. This call brought news that a major bridal magazine was canceling a planned feature about the boutique, citing the discrimination incident as incompatible with their publication's values. Even the fashion industry, Vivienne's professional home, was turning against her. As darkness fell outside, Vivienne stood in her empty boutique, surrounded by beautiful gowns that represented dreams she had helped destroy through her own prejudice and cruelty. The community had spoken clearly through their boycotts and protests. Justice was unfolding with methodical precision, orchestrated by a woman whose dignity and professional competence had transformed personal humiliation into systematic accountability. The consequences of discrimination were proving far more comprehensive and devastating than Vivienne had ever imagined possible. Her empire was crumbling, and there seemed no way to rebuild what hatred had destroyed. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of the downtown courthouse as Aaliyah Freeman adjusted her emerald green blazer and matching pencil skirt. The fluorescent lights overhead cast sharp shadows across the marble floors, illuminating the bustling activity of lawyers, clients, and court staff, preparing for another day of legal proceedings. Marcus Wellington stood beside her, his orange button-down shirt and navy slacks making him appear both supportive and professional as they approached the filing clerk's window. "We're here to file a comprehensive civil rights lawsuit," Aaliyah announced to the clerk, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent years navigating these halls of justice. The thick manila folder in her hands contained months of meticulous preparation, documented evidence, and legal precedents that would form the foundation of their case against Vivienne Ashford and her boutique. Rachel Summers, Aaliyah's legal partner, emerged from the elevator wearing a professional orange blouse and black slacks, her arms filled with additional case files and depositions. Her presence signaled the serious nature of their legal strategy, as Rachel's expertise in discrimination law had helped build some of the most successful civil rights cases in the state's recent history. The additional testimonies arrived this morning, Rachel informed them, setting her files on a nearby table. "We now have 7 other women who experienced similar discrimination at Vivienne Ashford's boutique over the past 3 years. Each case follows the same pattern of racial profiling, verbal harassment, and denial of equal service." Marcus Wellington nodded grimly, remembering how his video footage had prompted other victims to come forward through social media and news reports. The systematic nature of Vivienne Ashford's discrimination was becoming undeniably clear, transforming what might have been dismissed as an isolated incident into evidence of deliberate, ongoing civil rights violations. The courthouse buzzed with activity as news reporters gathered outside, their cameras ready to capture every moment of the proceedings. Vanessa Morton stood among them, her red blazer bright under the natural daylight, as she prepared her coverage of what many legal experts were calling a landmark discrimination case. Inside courtroom 3B, Judge Catherine Holt took her position behind the bench, her black robes contrasting with the bright overhead lighting that illuminated every corner of the spacious room. Known for her fairness and thorough understanding of civil rights law, Judge Holt had presided over numerous discrimination cases throughout her distinguished career. Vivienne Ashford entered the courtroom flanked by her expensive legal team, her red dress and matching jacket creating a stark visual reminder of her boutique's luxury branding. However, the confident demeanor she had displayed in her shop was nowhere to be seen. Dark circles under her eyes and the nervous fidgeting with her jewelry revealed the toll that weeks of boycotts, media scrutiny, and legal pressure had taken on her. Her lead attorney, a distinguished man in his 60s wearing a navy suit, attempted to project confidence as he arranged his papers at the defendant's table, but the mountain of evidence against his client was already creating challenges that no amount of legal expertise could easily overcome. "Your Honor," Aaliyah began as she stood to present her opening arguments, This case represents more than an isolated incident of poor customer service. The evidence will demonstrate a systematic pattern of racial discrimination that violated my client's rights under the Civil Rights Act, state public accommodation laws, and constitutional protections against discriminatory treatment. The courtroom fell silent as Aaliyah methodically outlined her case, her green blazer commanding attention as she moved confidently between her notes and the evidence displays. Years of legal training and courtroom experience had prepared her for this moment, and her professional composure transformed the personal humiliation she had experienced into a powerful tool for justice. The defendant, through her actions and those of her employees, created a hostile environment based solely on racial prejudice. Aaliyah continued, her voice carrying clearly through the fluorescent-lit courtroom. Video evidence, witness testimonies, and a documented pattern of similar treatment toward other customers of color establish beyond doubt that these violations were intentional, systematic, and ongoing. Rachel Summers approached the evidence table, connecting Marcus Wellington's phone to the courtroom's video system. The large screen flickered to life, displaying the clear footage of Vivian Ashford's discriminatory comments and cruel treatment from that morning in the boutique. The natural lighting from the shop's windows and overhead fluorescent illumination had captured every detail of the interaction, leaving no room for alternative interpretations. The courtroom watched in stunned silence as Vivian Ashford's voice filled the room. Her recorded words about Aaliyah belonging at other types of stores and suggestions that certain dresses aren't meant for everyone, creating an undeniable record of discrimination. Several spectators shifted uncomfortably in their seats, while Vivian Ashford herself appeared to shrink further into her red dress. As the court can observe, Aaliyah explained, gesturing toward the screen, the defendant's behavior was neither accidental nor misunderstood. Her comments specifically targeted my race and made assumptions about my financial status and worthiness based solely on my appearance and ethnicity. Amanda Pierce took the witness stand, her blue jacket and gray slacks presenting a professional appearance as she raised her right hand for the oath. As a customer who had witnessed the entire incident, her testimony would provide crucial third-party verification of the discrimination Aaliyah had experienced. I was shopping for my daughter's wedding dress when I observed the defendant treating Miss Freeman completely differently from other customers. Amanda testified, her voice steady and clear under the courtroom's bright lighting. From the moment she entered the store, Miss Freeman was subjected to hostile comments and dismissive behavior that I had not witnessed toward any white customers during my previous visits to the boutique. The defense attorney attempted to suggest that Amanda's observations might have been misinterpreted, but her detailed recollection of specific comments and interactions made such arguments appear desperate and unconvincing. The systematic nature of Vivian Ashford's discrimination was becoming impossible to deny. Samuel Griffin, director of the Regional Civil Rights Organization, provided expert testimony about discrimination patterns in retail establishments. His analysis of complaint records revealed that Vivian Ashford's boutique had received multiple informal complaints over the years, complaints that had been dismissed or ignored by the business owner. The evidence demonstrates a clear pattern of discriminatory behavior that extends well beyond this single incident. Samuel testified, his professional demeanor emphasizing the serious nature of the violations. When businesses fail to address discriminatory practices, they create environments where civil rights violations become normalized and systemic. One by one, other victims of Vivian Ashford's discrimination took the witness stand, each sharing similar experiences of racial profiling, hostile treatment, and denial of equal service. A young teacher described being followed around the store by employees while white customers shopped without supervision. A successful businesswoman recounted being shown only the least expensive dresses despite expressing interest in higher-end gowns. A college professor detailed comments about her suitability for certain styles that were offered freely to white customers. The cumulative effect of these testimonies created a devastating portrait of systematic discrimination that no legal team could effectively challenge. Vivienne Ashford's expensive attorneys found themselves reduced to minor procedural objections and desperate attempts to minimize the scope of their client's violations. During a brief recess, the defense team huddled around their client, their whispered conversations becoming increasingly urgent as the strength of Aaliyah's case became undeniable. Vivienne Ashford's red dress seemed to mark her isolation as other spectators gave her a wide berth. The community's rejection of her behavior extending even into the courthouse setting. "Your Honor," Rachel Summers addressed the court as proceedings resumed. "The evidence clearly establishes violations of multiple civil rights statutes. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 specifically prohibits discrimination in public accommodations based on race, and the defendant's business clearly falls under this protection. Additionally, state public accommodation laws provide further legal grounds for both damages and injunctive relief." The legal arguments continued as Rachel methodically demonstrated how Vivienne Ashford's actions had violated numerous laws and regulations governing business conduct and customer treatment. The boutique's practices had created what legal scholars term a hostile public accommodation environment, subjecting customers to discriminatory treatment based solely on their race. Marcus Wellington provided testimony about his documentation efforts and the social media response that had followed their boutique experience. His orange shirt stood out under the courtroom lighting as he described the community outrage and the numerous similar stories that had emerged after his video went viral. "I began recording because I recognized that Ms. Freeman was being treated differently than other customers," Marcus testified. "As the mayor's son, I've seen how discrimination operates in various community settings, and the defendant's behavior fit clear patterns of racial bias that needed to be documented and addressed through proper legal channels." Outside the courthouse, protesters had gathered in support of Aaliyah's case, their signs and chants creating a backdrop of community solidarity that emphasized the broader implications of the legal proceedings. The bright daylight illuminated their messages calling for business accountability and civil rights enforcement. Pamela Sinclair, the boutique's landlord, provided testimony about her decision to terminate Vivienne Ashford's lease due to community pressure and the negative impact on other tenants. Her blue jacket and professional demeanor lent credibility to her business-focused explanation of the consequences facing discriminatory establishments. The continued protests and negative publicity associated with the boutique created untenable conditions for other businesses in our shopping complex, Pamela testified. Multiple tenants expressed concerns about being associated with discriminatory practices, and the economic impact on the entire property became unsustainable. Donna Lawson, the former boutique employee who had participated in the discrimination, provided a written apology that was read into the court record. Her statement acknowledged her participation in the discriminatory treatment and expressed regret for her actions, though her words could not undo the harm that had been caused. As the day's proceedings concluded, Vivienne Ashford's legal team requested an urgent consultation with their client. The overwhelming evidence and compelling testimonies had created a legal situation that offered few viable defense options. Settlement discussions were becoming inevitable as the strength of Aaliyah's case left little room for successful challenges. Reporters surrounded Aaliyah and Marcus as they left the courthouse, the natural daylight creating perfect conditions for news coverage of their confident expressions and professional appearances. Aaliyah's green blazer caught the sunlight as she addressed the media with the same composure she had displayed throughout the legal proceedings. "This case represents the importance of holding businesses accountable for discriminatory practices," Aaliyah explained to the gathered reporters. "When individuals and communities work together to address civil rights violations, we create environments where everyone can expect equal treatment and basic human dignity." The legal momentum was clearly in Aaliyah's favor, as news reports highlighted the systematic nature of the discrimination and the comprehensive evidence supporting her case. Vivienne Ashford's boutique had officially closed its doors the previous week. Unable to sustain the financial losses from ongoing boycotts and mounting legal expenses, Samuel Griffin announced that the case had prompted policy reviews at similar businesses throughout the region, with several establishments voluntarily implementing new training programs and discrimination prevention measures. The broader impact of Aaliyah's legal action was already creating positive changes that extended far beyond her individual experience. As evening approached, the courthouse steps remained busy with supporters and media representatives discussing the day's developments. The bright fluorescent lighting from within the building cast long rectangles of light across the marble steps, symbolically illuminating the path toward justice that Aaliyah's case was creating. The legal reckoning had begun, and Vivienne Ashford's world of discrimination was crumbling under the weight of evidence, community solidarity, and professional legal expertise that refused to accept civil rights violations as acceptable business practices. The morning sun streamed through the courthouse windows as Aaliyah Freeman adjusted her professional green suit jacket, the fabric crisp and confident against her dark skin. Marcus Wellington stood beside her in his navy blue suit and white dress shirt, his hand gently resting on her back as they prepared to hear Judge Catherine Holt's final ruling. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation, overhead fluorescent lights illuminating rows of observers who had followed this case from its viral beginning to its legal conclusion. Judge Catherine Holt entered the courtroom wearing her black robes, her silver hair perfectly styled as she took her position at the bench. The natural daylight from the tall courthouse windows mixed with the bright artificial lighting, creating an atmosphere of transparency and justice. Aaliyah Freeman felt Marcus Wellington's reassuring presence as they rose for the judge's entrance, knowing that this moment would define not just their personal victory, but set a precedent for countless others who face discrimination. "Be seated," Judge Holt announced, her voice carrying the weight of legal authority. "We are here for the final ruling in Freeman versus Ashford Bridal Boutique. This case has presented clear evidence of discriminatory practices that violate both state and federal civil rights laws." Vivienne Ashford sat at the defendant's table wearing a deep red blouse and black skirt, her face drawn with the exhaustion of months of legal battles and public scrutiny. Her expensive legal team shuffled papers nervously, knowing that the overwhelming evidence against their client left little room for favorable outcomes. The boutique owner, who had once wielded her prejudice like a weapon, now appeared diminished under the bright courtroom lighting. Judge Holt reviewed her notes before continuing. The evidence presented by Attorney Freeman and her legal team demonstrates a clear pattern of discriminatory behavior. The video footage, witness testimonies, and documentation of similar incidents create an undeniable case of civil rights violations. Aaliyah Freeman maintained her professional composure, but Marcus Wellington could see the slight tension in her shoulders as they awaited the specific terms of the ruling. Behind them, Amanda Pierce sat in her blue jacket, the same one she had worn that fateful day in the boutique when she first witnessed the discrimination. Her brave testimony had been crucial in establishing the systematic nature of Vivienne Ashford's prejudice. "Therefore," Judge Holt announced, "I find in favor of the plaintiff on all counts. The defendant is ordered to pay substantial compensatory and punitive damages totaling $850,000. Additionally, this court mandates comprehensive civil rights training for any future business ventures and establishes a permanent injunction against discriminatory practices." The courtroom erupted in quiet murmurs of satisfaction as Aaliyah Freeman felt Marcus Wellington squeeze her hand. Vivienne Ashford's shoulders sagged in defeat, her red blouse now seeming to symbolize the shame of her actions rather than any position of authority. Her business had already closed permanently due to the boycotts and financial pressure, but the legal validation meant everything to those who had suffered her discrimination. Samuel Griffin from the Civil Rights Organization smiled from his seat in the gallery, his orange tie bright against his dark suit. He had worked closely with Aaliyah Freeman throughout the case, knowing that this victory would strengthen future discrimination cases across the region. The precedent established here would protect countless others from similar treatment. Judge Holt continued her ruling. This case demonstrates the importance of holding businesses accountable for discriminatory practices. The evidence shows that Mrs. Ashford's behavior was not an isolated incident, but part of a pattern of prejudice that violated the basic dignity of customers based on their race. Aaliyah Freeman's legal partner, Rachel Summers, wearing a green blouse and black pants, gathered their documentation as the judge concluded the formal proceedings. The months of preparation, witness interviews, and legal research had culminated in this comprehensive victory that would create lasting change beyond their individual case. Outside the courthouse, the bright afternoon sun illuminated the stone steps where media gathered for Aaliyah Freeman's statement. Vanessa Morton from the local news station positioned herself with her crew, her red blazer professional and crisp as she prepared to broadcast this significant legal victory. The natural daylight provided perfect lighting for the cameras as community members gathered to hear Aaliyah Freeman's response to the ruling. Marcus Wellington stood beside his fiancée as she approached the microphones, his navy suit complementing her professional green ensemble. The mayor's son had documented everything from that first day in the boutique, never imagining that his quick thinking would become crucial evidence in a landmark civil rights case. Today's ruling validates what we have always known. Aaliyah Freeman began, her voice clear and strong in the afternoon air. Discrimination has no place in our businesses or our community. This victory belongs not just to Marcus and me, but to everyone who has faced prejudice and refused to accept it as normal. The gathered crowd included many who had supported their case from the beginning. Amanda Pierce stood near the front, her blue jacket the same one she had worn when she first witnessed the discrimination. Her willingness to speak up as a witness had demonstrated the power of individual courage in fighting injustice. The settlement funds will establish the Freeman Wellington Scholarship Program for civil rights law students, Aaliyah Freeman announced, generating applause from the crowd. We want to transform this negative experience into positive opportunities for future lawyers who will continue fighting discrimination wherever it exists. Marcus Wellington stepped forward to speak, his white dress shirt crisp under his navy jacket. My fiancé's dignity in the face of hatred has inspired our entire community. Aaliyah Freeman never responded with anger or revenge, but with the professional competence that has made her one of our region's most respected civil rights attorneys. Vanessa Morton asked about the broader implications of the case. Attorney Freeman, how do you hope this ruling will impact other businesses in our community? Every business owner now understands that discrimination carries serious legal and financial consequences, Aaliyah Freeman responded. But more importantly, this case shows that our community will not tolerate prejudice. The boycotts, the social media response, and the support we received demonstrate that collective action creates real change. Samuel Griffin approached the microphones, his orange tie bright in the natural sunlight. The civil rights organization is announcing new partnerships with Freeman's law firm to address discrimination complaints throughout the region. Today's victory strengthens our ability to protect everyone's rights. Inside the courthouse, Vivienne Ashford emerged through a side entrance with her legal team, avoiding the main media gathering. Her red blouse seemed faded in the harsh daylight as she prepared to face the cameras for what would likely be her final public statement about the case. The boutique owner who had once commanded her store with prejudicial authority now appeared diminished and exhausted. A small group of reporters approached Vivienne Ashford as she walked toward a waiting car. Her expensive legal team flanked her protectively, but she stopped and turned to face the cameras. The overhead sun created stark lighting that emphasized the toll the case had taken on her appearance and demeanor. I want to offer a sincere apology to Miss Freeman, Mr. Wellington, and anyone else who witnessed or experienced my discriminatory behavior, Vivienne Ashford said, her voice lacking the confidence she had once displayed in her boutique. "There is no excuse for treating customers differently based on their race. I was wrong, and I accept full responsibility for my actions." Her red blouse fluttered slightly in the afternoon breeze as she continued, "My business is permanently closed, but I hope the scholarship program created from this settlement will help train lawyers who will prevent others from making the same terrible mistakes I made." Ms. Freeman's professionalism throughout this process has shown me what true dignity looks like. The gathered reporters captured this moment of accountability, understanding that Vivienne Ashford's genuine remorse, while late, represented a form of personal growth that could inspire others to examine their own prejudices. Her business empire had crumbled, but her acknowledgement of wrongdoing provided a path toward redemption. Back at the main press gathering, Aaliyah Freeman fielded questions about their upcoming wedding plans. "Marcus and I are more committed than ever to celebrating our love and continuing our work for civil rights. Our wedding will be a celebration of how love triumphs over hatred and how communities can come together to create positive change." Marcus Wellington added, "We've heard from other couples who faced discrimination while planning their weddings. Aaliyah Freeman's courage in fighting this case has inspired people across the country to stand up for their dignity and demand equal treatment." Amanda Pierce approached the couple after the press conference concluded, her blue jacket now familiar to everyone who had followed the case. "I want to thank you both for your courage. Watching you maintain your dignity while fighting for justice has inspired me to speak up against discrimination whenever I see it." Aaliyah Freeman embraced the woman who had been their first ally in the boutique that day. "Your willingness to witness and testify made all the difference. Individual courage like yours is what creates lasting social change." 3 months later, the Freeman-Wellington wedding took place in the city's botanical gardens, with natural sunlight streaming through glass conservatory windows and overhead lighting illuminating tables filled with family, friends, and community supporters. Aaliyah Freeman wore her dream wedding dress, purchased from a boutique that celebrated diversity and treated every customer with dignity and respect. Marcus Wellington looked handsome in his black tuxedo and white shirt as he waited for his bride at the altar. The mayor, his father Richard Wellington, served as officiant, his navy suit and blue tie formal for the occasion. The wedding had become more than a personal celebration, transforming into a community affirmation of love over hatred. Amanda Pierce attended the wedding wearing a beautiful blue dress, seated among other supporters who had stood with the couple throughout their legal battle. Samuel Griffin represented the civil rights organization that had benefited from their partnership, while Vanessa Morton covered the wedding as a celebration of justice and love. As Aaliyah Freeman walked down the aisle in her flowing white gown, the natural daylight from the conservatory windows created a radiant atmosphere that symbolized hope and triumph. The discrimination she had faced while shopping for this very dress had been transformed into a powerful statement about dignity, justice, and community support. During the ceremony, Marcus Wellington spoke about how their love story had become intertwined with their commitment to civil rights. "Aaliyah Freeman has shown me that true strength comes from maintaining dignity in the face of adversity and using professional competence to create systematic change." Aaliyah Freeman's vows reflected on their journey from discrimination to justice. "Marcus Wellington, you documented injustice when you could have remained silent. You used your privilege to amplify truth rather than protect comfort. Together, we will continue fighting for a world where everyone is treated with dignity and respect." The reception featured speeches from community leaders who praised the couple's impact on regional civil rights enforcement. The Freeman-Wellington Scholarship Program had already selected its first recipients, young law students committed to continuing the fight against discrimination in all its forms. Samuel Griffin announced during the reception that business discrimination complaints had decreased significantly since the Ashford case, as other owners implemented comprehensive civil rights training to avoid similar consequences. Aaliyah Freeman and Marcus Wellington's courage has created ripple effects throughout our entire region. Vanessa Morton's news coverage of the wedding emphasized how the couple had transformed personal discrimination into community progress. The story that had begun with viral social media outrage had evolved into systematic policy changes and legal precedents that would protect future generations. As the evening celebration continued, under warm overhead lighting mixed with natural sunset illumination, Aaliyah Freeman reflected on their journey from that painful day in the boutique to this moment of joy and community celebration. The discrimination had been transformed into scholarship opportunities, legal precedents, and renewed community commitment to equality. Marcus Wellington raised his glass for a final toast as the reception concluded. This celebration proves that individual dignity, professional competence, and community support can overcome any form of discrimination. Aaliyah Freeman and I are grateful for everyone who stood with us in demanding justice. The couple's story continued inspiring others who faced discrimination, proving that maintaining dignity while fighting systematically for justice creates lasting change that extends far beyond individual victories. Their wedding day represented the triumph of love, community, and civil rights over prejudice and hatred. You just heard a story that history tried to overlook. If it stayed with you, take a second to stand with it. Subscribe, share, and help us keep telling the stories that deserve light, not silence.